This week's Parsha Kedoshim is filled with many mitzvot. One of the mitzvot found in the Parsha is the injunction not to curse a deaf person nor place a stumbling block before the blind. But the verse doesn't stop there. It continues and says, "And you should fear your God, I am the Lord." Why does the Torah add in the additional part about fearing God when it should have just been enough to just issue the injunction? The latter commentators tend to interpret the addition about fearing God as a stern warning from God against violating this injunction. Baal HaTurim warns that if one does happen to curse a deaf person or place something in front of the blind, it won't be another person who will judge, but God himself will judge that person. Rav Shimshon Raphael Hirsch agrees and says that God is telling us that one should be aware that anyone who dares to transgress this commandment will be answerable directly to him. Rav David Tzvi Hoffman adds, and one should be very wary of appearing before this judge. Abarbanel spells out this idea and explains that if a person thinks that a deaf person can't hear or a blind person can't see the injustice that is being done to them, then there will be no one to stand up for them. God is saying that He will be the ear that hears for the deaf person, and He will be the eye that sees for the blind person. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction, even if it does not occur at that exact moment of time. No one should think that they can get away with their actions. It has all been duly noted and the potential created. At some point, the person who cursed a deaf person or placed a stumbling block before a blind person will receive their just deserts. Rashi expands this injunction and says that the verse is not just about taking advantage of an actual deaf or blind person, but is also meant to be interpreted figuratively. It should be understood as a metaphor against taking advantage of anyone who lacks knowledge or understanding in a certain area. Undoubtedly, even the wisest person can be ignorant in something. Rashi continues and says that because God knows a person's thoughts, He will know if this person was motivated by wanting to take advantage of the other person's lack of knowledge or acted due to some legitimate reason. While it's easy to say that mentioning fear of God with injunction to curse a deaf person or putting a stumbling block before a blind person is there to show accountability or responsibility, perhaps the purpose is less for punishment and more to show examples of holiness. The beginning of the parsha starts off with God telling us that we should be, or at least strive to be, holy, because God is holy. The Torah then starts listing seemingly random mitzvahs that don't appear to be connected to one another. It should be noted that after every law, God declares either Ani Hashem Elokechem or Ani Hashem, I am God. What ties all these seemingly disparate commandments together is that they are laws that by doing them will help the person who does them to emulate God and be kadosh as his God. True, there are laws that are between a person and God. However, we shouldn't think that being holy is a measure of how ascetic one can be. A person is meant to live in this world. A person is meant to live in a community with other people. Kedusha, holiness, is just as much about living in this world and with others as it is about establishing a relationship with God. Emulating God is to take those regular mundane moments and actions and interactions with others and dedicate them to God, thereby elevating them and helping us who do them to fulfill God's goal for us to become kadosh. Shabbat Shalom.